Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I have back on the line the one, the only Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin. And before we begin, Andy, I want to say it was nice to meet you in person for the first time at one of your recent Q&A events with Andy Schechtman. Man, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, same here. We've now had three, Denver, Minneapolis, and just last week in Phoenix. And we have three more coming, all of them free, in Fort Lauderdale on April 21st, which will include a free online webinar that'll go around the world, May 20th in Houston, and then June 24th in Chicago.
Well, it was cool. We were in a room filled with like-minded people, and this metropolitan area in which I live, there are more than 1 million people living here, and it was a full room. But Andy, it was still only, maybe 100, 150 people? A small sliver of this population is awake to the central bank malfeasance and enslavement of this generation and future generations. And while I'm on the topic of that Q&A, I want to give a shout out to Darren, who's a guy who's sitting at my table. I didn't speak at the event. Nobody knew I was there, but Darren recognized my voice, and it was a lot of fun to talk with Darren and some other people at the table. But that was a good group, Andy. There's a lot of people waking up, but it's still not nearly enough. Most of the population is sound asleep.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a lot more than we could have gotten a year ago. At least the prices have bottomed, so there's a lot more interest than there was. But as you said, the amount of people that have any interest in finance at all, let alone in the nuances of market manipulation and the great deformation caused by all the market manipulations is infinitesimal, which is fine because the amount of people typically throughout history that actually act to protect themselves proactively is about 1% anyway.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that the prices have possibly bottomed here. We have silver piercing back through 16 just last Thursday night. Gold is up some, 17, 18, 19% year to date. And you just recently wrote that central bank credibility is dead. I don't think anything speaks more directly to that fact than the rise in precious metals and mining shares prices.
Yeah, and again, remember, the quote bear market in precious metals, which was nothing more than the powers that be going all at the end of 2011 when they realized that they were losing control and deciding they had to 24/7 forever suppress the prices. The problem is that around the world, that bear market ended a year and a half to 2 years ago. Right now, the average gold in the average currency is at or near its all-time high. And even here in the States, obviously, the price is up amidst the most egregious suppression in history. It's still up $200 from the bottom. And as you said, for silver, what they call the golden cross, which means the 50-day moving average moving above the 200-day moving average, should happen as early as today and as late as tomorrow, validating that same technical move up in gold that occurred a month ago. And again, while technical analysis should be taken with a grain of salt in manipulated markets, the fact that the cartel spends every second of every day painting charts and trying to prevent such things shows you how powerful the move has been. So again, I feel very confident that the bottom was put in earlier this year or late last year, and that right now, as you said, with central bank credibility at an all-time low, it's really going to be difficult for them to hold the prices down no matter how hard they try.
Well, your article this past Friday was called Clueless Janet Launches Final Currency War into Hyperspace. Let's talk a little bit about that because, Andy, as I think you know, some of the things that people like about Donald Trump is that he at least speaks freely, he says what's on his mind, and sometimes he even makes sense. The same cannot be said for Janet. She just babbles, and half the time people literally don't know what she's trying to say, and I think it's because she can't tell the truth.
Yeah, well, the fact that she's actually a far worse speaker than Ben Bernanke shows you how bad the Fed is at picking its representatives, because these are the most important financial figures in the world, and she is a terrible communicator. As for Trump, by the way, he only speaks his mind because he's trying to get in office. Once he gets in office, he'll just do what Obama or Janet Yellen does, which is lie to kick the can as long as possible. But off of that topic, the fact is that yes, Janet Yellen even surprised me with her dovishness because, again, they have this PPT orchestrated short squeeze, biggest short squeeze of all time over the last 4 or 5 weeks. And typically when markets go up, the Fed all of a sudden loosens their lips. But this was as dovish a statement as you're going to get. So to me, it's a matter of obviously they're feeling the weight of the currency wars, given what the ECB announced the week prior and what the Bank of Japan announced the month prior, because if there's one thing that's going to make it difficult for the United States more, or that's going to kill any chance of recovery, it's a strengthening dollar when the rest of the world is devaluing their currencies as rapidly as possible.
Well, let's just review some of the horrors that are unfolding because, these people will continue to try to tell us with a straight face that the economy is doing pretty well. Meanwhile, in Japan, they've moved into negative interest rates, which in your own words means they're going to try to trap people in the banks and then take their money. The Chinese containerized freight index hit a new all-time low recently. U.S. business inventory to sales ratio hit a 7-year high. Of course, I'm taking these things from one of your latest articles about why COMEX COTs don't matter. India's non-performing loan percentage hit 18%, catalyzing yet another plunge in BRICS currencies. And subprime auto loan delinquencies surged to a 2-decade high. And Andy, we haven't even talked about Caterpillar yet, which continues to deteriorate at an alarming pace.
Well, how about this morning's news that Chinese auto sales, retail auto sales for the first 2 months of the year, meaning January, February of this year versus January, February of last year, were down 44%. I mean, that's how bad things are out there. The Chinese containerized freight index, as you said, hit an all-time low last week. And Caterpillar, in fact, I actually highlighted in my article this weekend. It's astounding. They've had year-over-year declines in monthly sales for 39 months now.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the biggest of all the year-on-year monthly declines was last month in February. So again, while we're peddling fiction over here by saying that things aren't good, the rest of the world is telling us how bad they are. In fact, look at the numbers this morning. Look at this morning's Chicago National Manufacturing Index. Look at the plunge in new home sales. This is this morning. This is American data. And then to see that there's a Fed governor out there, trying to play his game, saying, "Yeah, we're considering rate hikes because the unemployment rate is getting low." It's like, well, yeah, but you just voted unanimously to delay them because the economy's so bad. Now, 2 days later, you're changing your mind based on what? I mean, we're talking about when you talk about the credibility is gone. Yeah, even I'm astounded. I'm astounded. I see the Bank of Japan. The guy says in January, we're not going to go to negative interest rates. And then he does a week later. And then 2 days later, when the market goes down, he says, oh, we're going to go much lower than that. We can go lower than the ECB. And even better than that, the Bank of Japan had a meeting last week. So at the meeting, they have their word cloud, like everyone looks at what the Fed says, every word that they change. Well, they had language that they put in last month when they went to negative interest rates for the first time in after zero interest rates for 20 years, and they had a line that said, "We will go to lower negative interest rates if we need to." So what did they do at their meeting? They thought that they were going to be cute by taking that language out, which got everyone all crazy. Oh my God, they may not do it again after 1 month. So sure enough, the next day, the guy comes down and says, "Oh no, we didn't mean that. We actually will do it." This is what I mean by central bank credibility is dead. They are ruled by the markets, as I've said along. They couldn't care less about the economies. All they could care less about is whether the market is going in the direction they want it to be. And even when it is going in the direction they want it to be, the things they say, they put their foot in their mouth, they talk out of both sides of their mouth. No one is listening to these guys anymore. All they have is the manipulation of markets that is becoming more and more transparent with each passing day.
I want to just circle back and bring up that Caterpillar retail sales collapse again. And what occurred to me when I recently read an article about how bad it's gotten for Caterpillar, Andy, it made me remember the fact that these are dealers across the country and, of course, across the globe. But think about the dealers in this country that sell cat. These are often moms and dads and salespeople with families. And when you see a retail sales collapse, 20% month over month, 16% month over month, and it continues to decline. These are people who are suffering. These are people who risk not being able to put food on the table or pay their mortgages. And at the end of the day, the people with all the paper in the world to meet their obligations are the central banks that print it out of thin air. So I guess what I'm asking you, Andy, is as we have empathy for our friends and neighbors who are suffering in this economic collapse, what are you sensing from people at these Q&As? What are people's biggest fear moving forward? With
Caterpillar, it's not just their business. Caterpillar is the global bellwether for economic activity. Even Jim Cramer says, I don't need to listen to any conference calls during earnings period except for Caterpillar. Well, Caterpillar is telling you that the global economy is the worst that it's ever seen. And of course, it's not just limited to manufacturing. We're seeing these same kind of trends in sales across the board, retail, you name it. And when you ask about what people are asking, of course, the people coming to our Q&A wrap session are not the average people. These are people who are really focused on what's going on in the world, as opposed to the average person who, if you put me in front of them and said, you can ask me whatever they want, you'd hear crickets. They would ask nothing. They wouldn't even know what to ask. But what are people worried about? I wrote an article maybe a month or two ago called Junk Silver, Precious Metal IRAs, and Fear, or something like that. And I basically said the amount of requests that we're getting these days for people who want to convert their IRAs into precious metal IRAs, or to take precious metal, or to take their IRAs and cash them out to buy precious metals. It shows you that people are terrified of having their money in the system, and if it is in the system, they want it in something that's less risky than the financial assets like stocks and bonds. So what I see is fear. It's a general fear. It goes all the way back to when we had that shortage last summer of silver, July, August, and into September, which was probably the biggest shortage that we've seen since 2008. I remember Andy Scheckman saying, "Man, it's just I can't put my finger on it, but everyone is just calling up fearful, like they know something is going to happen and they need to do something about it." And that's kind of the sense that I get at these meetings, especially people who have assets in the system that they are worried may be commandeered or restricted, those kind of things.
Yeah, and guys, I want to apologize for a spotty connection. Usually with Andy, we have a fantastic, perfect connection, and today it's been a bit of a struggle, so my apologies. Last question for you, Andy. Where there's smoke, one of the reasons we love to speak with you is because you have been documenting the criminality of the cartel better than anybody for years, and you just wrote on the 21st of March, the cartel executed their 136th Sunday night sentiment raid of the last 143 weekends, 614th 2:15 a.m. attack of the past 709 trading days, and zillionth raid at the New York COMEX Open. I love how you're able to keep track of all that, Andy. What are these guys up to? They're really trying to keep the battle for 1250 at bay.
I've never seen anything like it, and I say that all the time. I mean, I'm not sure how many more times I can say this is the worst yet, but I remember again sitting in my office at my old place in New York back in around 2005 and just mumbling every day worse than the last, and to think that that's compounded now for an additional 11 years or whatever. Because I mean, anyone who can't see that every single uptick in gold and silver are now being challenged to the point where you see these jagged lines on the chart all day long, like today, nonstop. And yet, gold's up $200 and silver is at its highest level in over a year. And and of course, in other currencies, they've been breaking out in a big way. So again, this is, as I wrote an audio blog a week or two ago called the Fight to the Monetary Death. That's what we're in right now. These are the death throes. And I don't believe that they're going to be able to do this much longer, because I could see the physical demand is starting to overwhelm the lack of physical supply. And now you're talking about production declines ad infinitum for both gold and silver at a time when demand is at a record high. I mean, something is going to have to give soon. And the fact that the prices have definitively bottomed already here in the United States and surged overseas tells you that something is starting to break as we speak.
Yeah, and just real quickly, let's quantify it. You're saying demand is up and demand for physical is up, and let's quantify it. We're not just saying it to say it. We're not saying it because we love hyperbole. It's true. And Steve St. Angelo over at SRS Rocco just reported the other day, Silver Eagle sales to jump 25% due to deteriorating market conditions. And Andy, this is on the back of record Eagle sales last year.
Yep, in 13, 14, and 15, and now we're at a pace of 25, 50% above that with rationing. In fact, in India, they had India's the biggest silver consumer in the world, and they had record imports in 2015. And I assure you they'll have record imports this year now that the rupee is sitting at its all-time low. So again, no matter how you slice it, demand around the world for gold and silver is at a record high, and it's not going down with what we're talking about, negative interest rates in Europe and Japan, all these draconian measures, and on top of that, you have QE and NERP. ECB just increased their QE program to a larger program than what the Fed's QE3 was last year. And on top of that, you have, so basically you're going to see an increasing amount of demand around the world at a time where the supply pool is rapidly shrinking now that we've had peak production of both gold and silver unequivocally.
Last question. In your wildest dreams, had you ever imagined that they would pull a negative interest rate program? Was it even possible? Was it in your vernacular? I'd never heard of NERP prior to the past few months.
No, I never heard of it. I mean, I'm a CFA. I've spent my whole education learning about every nuance of economics. I've never heard of that. And even now that we have it, I'm still in awe of it because I can't imagine how anyone thinks that it would work. In fact, the funny thing is, not only is it making things worse, but people are actually hoarding money instead of spending it. It's almost like they'd rather lose a little bit into the bank than to spend money that they need for the future. And it's a catch-22, of course, because A, the bank is going to increase those negative rates, and B, they're going to hyperinflate away the purchasing power of what they have. But the fact is, I can't even comprehend who could have even thought of something so ridiculous.
Yeah, it is truly a stunning world in which we live. And guys, if you want to protect yourself with physical precious metals, there's a couple of places to do it that I trust. One of them is Miles Franklin. Andy, tell people how to get in touch with you guys, will you?
We're in our 27th year in business, A+, Better Business Bureau rating. You can call us at 800-822-8080. You can email me, Hoffman@milesfranklin.com. And again, remember, we have our free meetings with myself and Andy Scheckman, April 21st in Fort Lauderdale, May 20th in Houston, and June 24th in Chicago.
Yeah, guys, check that out. You'll be surrounded by like-minded individuals, which in this day and age is hard to find and increasingly rare. Andy, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Same here. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, and thanks for tuning in. Sorry for the technical difficulties on this one. We'll try to do better next time. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks for checking us out at sgtreport.com and thelibertymill.com. Real news 24/7. Have a wonderful week ahead. God bless.